They're not going to hire someone that they don't feel is qualified for the job. Now, you may very well be qualified, but you have to show them that you're qualified. You have to demonstrate that. You have to use not just the right keywords, but also the statements and the big picture, accomplishments that show them you've actually done that before. Today, we're going to be talking about some of the other resume trends that I see going on, as some of the questions that you all have asked about what do you do when this is going on in a resume. And these are things that we're seeing happen a lot right now, but also that have been around. So, career change, how do you help someone who's making a career change? And then also, kind of similar, what do you do on someone's LinkedIn profile when they're making a career change, but maybe they aren't ready to tell everyone that they're making a career change? So, what do we do with these issues? We've got someone who's changing careers. We have someone who is wanting to write a LinkedIn profile. You only get one. You don't want to create two LinkedIn profiles, but you only want to write that one in a way that will speak to maybe two different audiences. We'll look at an example of that here in a minute. Let's talk about what we do with someone who's changing careers and they're writing their resume towards something different. The first thing is they do have to be qualified for that new job. If they don't have any experience that will translate to what the new job is asking for, they can't demonstrate those skills at all, they are going to do something else as a stepping stone. So what are they qualified for that is a step in the right direction? Or, are they going to go and take a class? Is there a way they could volunteer? These are what I call bridge blocks, right? They're the bricks that you would use to build a bridge towards that new job. And depending on how big the transition is, you may need a few bricks in your bridge. And sometimes people can overdo this and think, oh, I'm making this huge transition, so I've got to do all this work. But most of the time, what I see is people thinking they can make the transition and they need some more bricks in their bridge. Especially right now, this seems to be a common thing. People want to make that transition because of the Great Resignation and whatever might be going on in their life or their search for meaning. And unfortunately, employers still want someone who's qualified for the job. And even though unemployment may be low and you think, oh, they're kind of hard up for an employee, they're not going to hire someone that they don't feel is qualified for the job. Now, you may very well be qualified, but you have to show them that you're qualified. You have to demonstrate that. You have to use not just the right keywords, but also the statements and the big picture, accomplishments that show them you've actually done that before, which may be just a tour of translation and connecting the dots. If it's more than that, then figure out how to build your bridge. Is there a stepping stone job? Is there volunteer opportunities, a class that you can take? What is going to help you move in that direction so that you can show you're qualified for that job? If it's a translation issue, that's where you can really dig in and first start with the end goal in mind. What jobs are you aiming for? Gather 3 or 4 job descriptions for those jobs, and then you can put them into a couple different tools or just processes to figure out what are the main things that they're looking for. I like to use an SEO tool actually and go through this process of putting the job descriptions together, put them in there, and then see what they say are the top skills that you need. You can always also use a system like Skill Syncer or JobScan. You can put the job descriptions in there and they will tell you the top keywords that you need. Or you can, good old analog, either print it out or put it on the computer and go through and highlight what are the top skills that they need. I do like to combine 2 or 3 very similar job descriptions so that you get kind of a rounded view of what they're looking for. What are the big buckets first? Don't just go straight to the keywords. What are the big buckets that they're looking for? And I've got a whole video on how to target a resume. But that's when you're making a career change. It's that you've got to know what your focus is. If you don't know that, you can't do any of this process. And then you've got to translate what you've done in the past into that language of the future. And this goes beyond keywords. It's really important that it's not just about matching the keywords. It's about talking about accomplishments and skills and duties that are important to the new job in their language So the keywords are a part of it, but it's also knowing what to choose and what to talk about. So that's the first thing with the career changers. You got to get focused, get the job descriptions, get the big buckets. What are the competencies that they're looking for? And then make sure your stories line up to those competencies. And when you're doing that in a resume, it's pretty easy because you can even target it for 3 or 4 different types of jobs. I'd recommend 2 or 3, otherwise you just get too scattered. But you can change a resume and not worry about having 2 or 3 different ones, because the person's only going to see the one that you decide to send to them for the job that they've got open. When you get into the LinkedIn profile, then it gets a little bit trickier because you only get one. You only get one resume, or you only get one LinkedIn profile, even though you might be applying to 2 or 3 different types of jobs. Or on the example I'm going to show you, you may be working and not want to be too obvious that you're wanting to transition into something else. So I'm going to pull up an example that I wrote a little while ago for someone who was transitioning from being a financial advisor to being a project manager, product manager in the tech space. And this person had done that before, and wanted to go back into it. So that makes it a little easier, right? They had the background. And on their resume, it was really easy. We just told those project stories. We were really short in the financial analyst, financial advisor section, even though it had been quite a few years, because we didn't want to focus there. We wanted to focus more on the relevant experience. And this is true too if you've got someone that's got a gap. I just had someone ask in our Facebook group, what do I do with someone that's been a stay-at-home parent for 3 years? And one of the suggestions was, put the domestic engineer. I don't recommend that actually, because then you're just filling the page with a bunch of things that aren't as relevant and maybe looked down on. Unfortunately, I know there's a lot of popular talk out there about that gaps don't matter and staying at home to take care of aging parents or kids doesn't matter, but it does. Research shows it does. And until I see research that shows it doesn't, I'm not going to fill a gap with that, and especially not elongate that information unless I absolutely have to. So what do I want to put in that gap? Just brevity. If the work wasn't that relevant, I'm going to translate as much as I can to make it relevant. You'll see that here in this example in a second. Or put in something that is relevant if I can. Volunteer work, a class. A class is the number one research-based way to fill that gap. Or a one-liner of family care. Then I don't have to reveal if I was a parent or the child of an aging parent. I can just say family care and leave it at that. No details, no domestic engineer explanation, just those words and the dates. Then the rest of the resume is dedicated to the experience that I have that is more relevant, or is that translated to be as relevant as possible. Now, if your stay-at-home gig is relevant, maybe you're doing at-home care and that's the industry you want to go into, then you might put a little bit more in there. If you're doing volunteer work that's relevant to what you want to do, then you might put a little bit more in there. But if it's simply at-home care and it's not relevant, then you don't want to waste the space on the page there. You want that. And it's not about that people don't value it, although research shows they may not, but it's really just about that your resume is what is relevant to that hiring manager, and how can you connect the dots and tell those relevant stories. So here's one where I had a financial advisor who was going back into product management in the tech space. So it talked about the 9 years as a financial advisor because, right, he has clients, or she, I can't remember. They had clients and they couldn't let those clients know that they are searching for something else. And then talking about their strengths, planning and problem solving strengths, a little bit of who they are, just kind of generally, right? That they got a job from their apartment manager so that they could marry their wife, a little bit of humanness there, which is really important for a LinkedIn profile. And then that's how they got into the high tech world. So we connect them to that world, even though they're not in it right now, so that someone who's in that world could see why they might want to go back. Then we give more about IT work because that's what's relevant, but it sounds very historical. Um, this is how I got my start. And then you'll see that they've put back in the financial advising piece. So you could think of it in two different ways. Either you bring it up to the 30,000-foot view, right? Big picture. Who is this person? What are their strengths? What have they looked like? And then, Deb Dib talks about it. It's like the foundation or the underneath, the foundation work. And that's who you are at the core. What is it about you that makes you good at everything you do? So those two examples, whichever one you want to use for your LinkedIn profile, especially when someone's transitioning, you have to show who they are in both worlds, and so that people can see why they might be interested in both places. And you might talk about it as an interest if it's something new they're going into, or talk about that history if it's something that they're going back to that they had done it a while ago. So those are your opportunities in that LinkedIn profile. You only got one. So you've got to talk about those strengths, the core of that person, who they are, and then connect it a little bit to both worlds if possible, so that people can see where they are right now and then where they're going or going back to. So hopefully that's helpful.